who did the best casting, but in reality also you need to have some type of influence. You need to have a voice. You have to have something to say, something to contribute to society. And so I took this TV hosting workshop, and they said, if you feel uncomfortable talking about your own life and sharing that type of stuff, what could you talk about nonstop for that you would feel comfortable sharing with your audience? And I said, well, I'm a self-improvement nerd because that's all the books I read. And I went through a very painful divorce about 11 years ago. And that experience changed my life because it showed me that anything negative that happens in your life, you can actually flip the pancake, as you may, and you can turn that drama into your life fuel and really learn, grow from it, become a better person, and then reinvent your life. So Mamas Con Ganas comes from that process, and me realizing, okay, I do want to start creating content because as an entertainer, that also gave me a voice. And as females, there's not enough producers or writers and directors, and we need more of that. I mean, I can't wait for the day where like women will be writing movies and plays and directing even more. And we have started like a movement, and there are way more than before, but I still, in my industry, we're always complaining as actresses that we don't have the roles that we want. And now I've realized we got to create those roles for ourselves. We have to empower ourselves, write the scripts that we want, tell the stories that we want to tell, and so that our voices can be heard. And mostly for the Latino community. We are the least represented community in the entertainment industry in the United States. We're the biggest minority group, and we have the least representation. So our voices, we have to amplify our voices and really join forces together and definitely lift each other up, because we need more of us on media in general.
Absolutely. I mean, that was honestly the push behind why the network started, right? I mean, there's so many podcast networks out there, and everybody can join whatever network they want. But the difference between those networks and what we're trying to do is exactly what you're saying. We don't have representation in media, especially when the media form is starting to develop and create a lot of noise. If you're not on the forefront of, hey, we are here, we have representation. Like if you're not on the forefront pushing for those things at the beginning, you kind of get sucked under the wave, and then you have to just take whatever's given to you. And, I support you 100% in what you're saying. We have to be the ones that are creating the space. We have to be the producer. We have to be the writer. We have to be the director. We have to be the actor. It's
yes. And we're so diverse in our community. I mean, we are like all the colors of the rainbow. And when I would go out to castings, I would get really I was not American enough, but not Latina enough. And then other women that like the Afro-Latinas, they're also considered #not Latina enough. It's like they want to put us into this mold, but our community is so diverse, and we have to show the world that we are, and we can look like anything, and that's why I think it's so important.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of the things about the acting industry, right, is you guys do create the image of what we believe we are, right? So like if an actress is not being cast and you are what Latinas are, what does that say about the projection back to our own personal communities about what we're seeing, right? Like, of course there's no Afro-Latinas. Of course there's no all this other stuff, because we haven't seen it we're starting to see a lot more of the diversification now, but like,
yes,
I can't imagine what you've experienced. What's been like one of the most difficult challenges that you've had in that industry?
I'll tell you, it's been a blessing and a curse at the same time. I think it's the rejection, because you get rejection so many times that you get so many no's. But if you really love, like I love what I do, and I really don't do it. I got to a point in my life, I don't know what age it was, where I realized I'm really not doing this for the fame. I'm doing this because to me, what acting does, it's a connection where we see that all of our suffering and pain and all of our joys, those experiences of joys and pain, are all linked together as humans. And that's what I love transmitting when I get on stage or when I get on there. But it's the hardest thing has been getting over the nose, but it's also been my biggest blessing, because now it's turned me into a person where it's like, okay, no, then I keep on going. No, I'll keep on going. And then now it's like my fuel, because I realize I can't be taking that personally. It's not a reflection of me in reality. And And I thank those no's because now it's made me into a way more perseverant person, and a person who actually won't, at this point, this podcast is here to stay. I love what I do. I love the women that I get to interview and that I get to feature and the things that I get to talk about. So I'm thankful for those no's because it's led me down another path to where I actually have more power over what I'm doing and what I'm creating. Because if I would have gotten the yeses, maybe I would have never gotten to the point where now I'm amplifying the voice of other women. So it's been like a full circle ride. Sincerely, yes.
Such a beautiful message. It's like, don't take no for an answer. It's not really an answer. It's just that they're not in your same space, right? Like it's almost like they're kind of helping you guide you into the right direction and where you're supposed to be anyway.
And we're always where we're supposed to be. That's the interesting thing. And whenever I haven't gotten maybe something that I really wanted in my life, in retrospect, I always can find the reason like, oh, that's why it was.
Yeah.
In the moment, we can't see it because we're so frustrated that we didn't get what we want. But then later on, if we open our hearts to experience like what the learning lesson was from it, you're like, oh, that's why it happened. Like, yes, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I think, you can be very limited in your thinking if you think to yourself like, oh, bad things always happen to me. In reality, no, like you're right where you're supposed to be. And the universe will unfold. I really, truly believe that if you put in your work here, anything is possible. And if you have good intentions and you let other people see that within you, good things come your way, no matter what. Like God has your back.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What has been your favorite episode so far from your podcast?
There's so many. The episode that I launched today, I love because it was a topic that I had been wanting to bring in for a long time. And it's about the victim mentality and how sometimes we don't realize that we live in that victim mentality. But when I was interviewing Patti Musiet from Centro Eres Alma, she's una psicóloga, she's a psychologist from Chile. And this episode was in Spanish. She was telling me that most of the people, the biggest thing that people suffer from, that they go to her, where she needs to sort of switch the mentality, is because they have that victim mentality. People are always saying, oh, he did me wrong, or that person hurt me. But in reality, when you take ownership of your life, like full accountability and full ownership, like there's nothing that can stop you. There's nothing that will come your way that you can't, like, interestingly enough, we've all been in that victim mentality. Like, I know I've been there. Like, when I went through my divorce, I was stuck in that victim mentality hole. And when I actually got out of it and I went, wow, like I have so much more power. Like, I can't control what other people do, but I can control what I do. And what I do is what makes a difference in my life. And when you change, the world around you changes. Mm-hmm. So that's one of my favorite episodes. And then the other one that I loved that I did recently was called Eliminating Racism in Your Family. Mm. And so that was an episode about, it was a very, like, I cried in that episode. People that listen to it, I get goosebumps just talking about it. So I interviewed my husband's life coach, Melanie Clark. She's an African American. She came in and basically gave she has this beautiful way of sharing messages because she's a life coach. And so the message is always done with love, and it's done with, but also with an awareness that we may not have when we aren't African American, or we're not going through those experiences. And as you and I both know, although people may say that there's no racism in Latin America, some people still deny it. That's BS. We all know that. And so that is something that I felt was a message that was truly important for our time. So that was one of my favorite ones as well.
I think in our community, we're so afraid to have that conversation of colorism and just what it's actually done to our communities and how we've completely erased the fact that we have African blood in almost all of us, or there's a mixture of that everywhere. That alone, it's like we have so many layers to uncover when it comes down to racism in our culture. So the fact that you were able to do that, I applaud you for that. Because those are very hard conversations, and sometimes it's scary because sometimes you actually have to admit that there probably was a time in your life where you actually thought that mindset and that mentality was right.
It was one of the scariest episodes that I did in an interview. Like, I prayed so much before I did that interview. And I was like, please let me get this right, Because, and I mean, at the end of the day, we all get judged when we're public figures. People are going to judge us no matter what. I mean, we can't, but we just, I think, like I said, again, when you come with with your heart open and your heart on your sleeve, and you say things that come from your higher self. It's not coming from ego or anything like that. You're doing it for the love, to share the love. Then when you do it, share the love, those haters, oh well, what are you going to do?
True. I mean, you're right. It's all about the intention. If you have good intentions, doors open for you. And the people that are not supposed to be around you will be gone. And that's just
absolutely.
Yeah. So what has been something that you have been super surprised about because of your podcast?
I don't know if it's surprised, but I don't know if it's a surprise, but I guess it's been the surprise that I've gotten lately is the fact that, wow, that I am able to reach these people, like, in all different areas and like get into the homes of people that I don't know. And like with podcasts, you're literally in somebody's ear. I think it is the most powerful thing that you can do because you're literally in their ear. It's like you're talking to a friend, and it's so intimate. And the fact that somebody can be listening to me in Colombia or Venezuela or wherever, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, the fact that they're listening to me from all places, to me, it's like I knew that was my intention anyways, but it still surprised me. Mm-hmm. I was like, yes, okay. I guess I'm not doing this just for empty space. But, it's a big process, a lot of work. People don't know how much work it entails. But it's, I guess I answered your question.
No, you're right, though. So tell us a little bit more about the work, because I think a lot of people who don't podcast or don't necessarily know what goes into creating of a podcast, what is the work that you're talking about? And like,
oh my gosh, it's so much. It's like it's another one of these things where you grow so much because, I mean, in the beginning, it was very overwhelming to do it by myself. Like this year has been, ironically, the biggest blessing in the sense that I think God basically said, Valentina, you sit down. You prayed for a consistent year last year. Now you're going to be consistent. It's like, you can't go anywhere. So now you're going to literally work. And so, there's marketing involved, which to me was the hardest. What I love as a creator is the creation of the content, the interviewing, because I get to interview and do all this. But, then after that, if you don't market it, nobody sees it. And so you're basically speaking in the dark or to the wall. So when you put so much work into the actual research of the person that you're interviewing, research of the topic that you want to do, and then you create it, and then you edit it, and then you put it up on your hosting website, and I do a blog also that accompanies it. It's a lot and then you have to reach out and constantly reach out to other people in order to interview them. I mean, you're basically a publicist and a marketer and an editor, and but it's awesome. You learn so much. But it's a lot of work. This year, for the first time, I actually had I wanted to bring in somebody on board to help me, and I hadn't done that. And I knew I needed to, but I was scared because, as you know, when we open up our businesses, it's like our little baby, and you are so careful about doing things right that you're scared to delegate because you're like, are they going to love this as much as I do? And that's super scary. But I had to make that jump this year, and I found somebody, her name is Jorna Castañez. Like, she's been my lifesaver this year. She's the reason I've grown so much this year. So, yeah.
I totally agree with you. I have to give a shout out to the interns that worked with us this semester, and we're taking on a lot of other interns that are starting with us on Friday. But Adis and Gabby, if you're listening, they've been like the lifesavers and really have been the ones that have helped drive the boat forward, while I'm also doubling as somebody that I work a full-time job, and I also, am developing a podcast network as well. And I'm super lucky to be connected to all you amazing women that are sharing your voices with the world. And, it's such a blessing, but you're right. You do sometimes have to actually look back and say thank you to the people that have been behind the scenes working, because they do a lot. They do a lot more.
They do so much. And with that,
and it's hard sometimes.
It's
to
so
let
hard
go, 'cause you're like, this is my baby. Like,
yes. And you're like, oh my God, because you do realize it's your voice. But I think when you find the right person, it's the biggest blessing, and you have that synergy where you both are on the same page, and the vision for your brand is the same, and then it just makes everything honestly like skyrocket. So yeah, that's been great.
I'm really excited to be talking to you about all this, because I think, like, you have your personality outside of just podcasts. So what do you think is, between what you're doing with acting and then your blog and your podcast, which one of those things do you think is the one that feeds your soul the most?
Honestly, right now it's my podcast, because with like I said, with the acting, as an actor, we can get really frustrated because sometimes we have a lot of casting, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we book a lot, and then sometimes we don't. And so when I've realized that when you have a project on your own and you have a voice and you can consistently be doing that, at the end of the day, that feeds your soul, because you have a mission and you have a purpose. So right now, definitely, I would say my podcast is my baby, and that's what feeds my soul. It feeds my soul, like I said, getting to interview amazing women that are doing amazing things. And I actually have interviewed several men for my podcast, but they're far in between. They're not too many, but the ones that like I also want to bring in once in a while. But yeah, definitely that. But like yesterday was a crazy day. I literally did 5 self-tapes, 5 voiceover castings, and 1 self-tape. It was crazy. And I have my kids that are in the house with quarantine. It's normally what you see on social media. Like yesterday, I tried to share that because everybody thinks, oh, no, I put on makeup like right before we came on.
Yeah.
But before that, it's like, it's running around trying to make, and obviously get systems to work better and better each time. Prove like as soon as that's why I think we can't add on so many things at the same time. That's one of the things I've learned. It's like you have to get good at something before you add something else to the pile, or otherwise we can get really overwhelmed really, really fast. And mostly as mothers, when we feel like our energy is spread out so thin in all different directions. By the way, that I know your cousin. I didn't know, but
yes.
Rocio. Yes.
Yeah. I think give a shout out to Rita Rizos. For all of those who know Rocio, my cousin she has been like such an awesome inspiration through all of this. And like, I had a chance to work behind the scenes with her during, her tour, and just like see everything that she's been able to do and her growth. And she's like, I shared the post that you tagged me in earlier, and she's like, oh my God, Valentina. And I'm like, yeah, I know her. I was like, she's one of the podcasts on the network now. And, we both shared like how sweet you are and all that stuff. So yeah, she definitely.
Yeah, I love her. She's awesome.
Yeah, she is. She just had a baby, so shout out to baby Penny, little girl.
I know.
And for those of you who don't follow her, you totally should, because she's a mix of like curly hair, funny, family, and she gives you like a bunch of tips on lifestyle. So at Reese's Rizzos, if you guys want to follow her, and she also has a YouTube channel, Reese's Rizzos as well. Yes. Yeah, she's awesome. Love my cousin, and we grew up together. We're just like, we're the family. Our family's like super knit tight too, which is funny because we're like, there's 11 cousins, and we text each other every single day.
Do you guys live all in the same state?
No, we live all over the country, but it's basically like, all the Latinos in the U.S. like their family members are everywhere. Everybody's everywhere, and it's like, we're still like, it's funny because I'm pretty sure like if we were to have to get together or something at some point, all of us would be sleeping on the floor somewhere, like just your regular family member, cousin party, like we still act like kids. So it's cool to have a pretty big family. But yeah, she is my cousin, and
yes, that's awesome.
They'll support each other. So that's what's cool about all of that.
I forgot to say something. Go ahead.
How did you meet Rocio?
Rocio at Hispanicize. We spent some fun times in Hispanicize, and Ada from, you know Ada from all that. Yes. Yes. So her and Ada, we met. My best friend and I went to Hispanicize, and we met them, and we partied, and it was fun.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Community. That's when you're onto something good, is when you start connecting to all these good people who are already connected to good people. So
And it's interesting. You see everybody's evolution and how everybody's grows little by little. And that's what's beautiful.
Absolutely.
I do want to say, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I do want to say, you know, for anybody who's thinking about opening a podcast, that I heard the other day that the average podcaster only does 10 episodes and that's it. And then they stop. And I've heard some episodes of podcasts where I'm like, I listen to it and I'm like, this is awesome. This is awesome. And then they stop it. And they're awesome because it's something that really does take like time to grow and for you to like flourish it, like a garden, like a flowers or whatever. So for anybody who's starting, like know that it's not easy or whatever. It doesn't come fast. Well, like anything in life worth pursuing, you know, but it's worth it. And it's a beautiful world.
Absolutely. To piggyback off of what you just said, one of the things that the way that we got started with Latina Podcasters during the pandemic, I started doing virtual happy hours on Thursday because podcasters, when you're in the independent space, it can feel like you're in islands by yourself, right? And so in order for us to continue to support each other and to continue to grow and to avoid pod burn, which is essentially what that is when you're podcasting, you have that original euphoric feeling and the adrenaline's pumping and you're like, people are listening to me. And then you realize it takes 4 hours, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, depending on how much editing you want to do. And then the marketing and then the blogs and the transcriptions and everything. And it's like, it takes a lot. So what was great is we were able to create that space for people to come together. And the number one pillar for us is comunidad first, right? So making and how we can support each other in that space. So even if you're not part of the network, you can join us on Thursdays. It is a $10 drop-in for those who are not on it, but you can come meet other podcasters if you're starting to burn out or you're tiring yourself out and you need some support or you just have questions that you don't have anybody else to ask them to. You're more than welcome to join us. It's every Thursday at 7 o'clock Central. And we normally get anywhere from like 5 people to 10, 20 people. So it really just depends, but we're here to support you too. So even if you're not part of the network, we still want to make sure that we are connecting the community and allowing people the space to join in on the conversation, right? You don't like, I know that not everybody has the means, not everybody is able to join a network or they're just starting out and getting their feet wet. So we want to support you any way that we can.
And I think it's, you know, to add to that, I do want to say that being part of a network, although like you said, it is an additional cost, I think it's priceless because like you said, it's a very lonely, isolating type of world, mostly when you're at your home doing it all by yourself. And mostly now in the pandemic, we're stuck at home even more and we're even more isolated. And it's great because like I loved the other day when you had, it was a guy podcaster that you had and he was telling us about all these tips. And I was there and it's like, you get to learn. And the thing is that, you know, there's always one more added layer to what we do. And when you are like sort of cross-pollinating all these good ideas and what works for you and you share that with another person and that other person is working for them, I mean, it just makes everybody rise at the same time.
Absolutely. And that's what we're all here for, right? We should be considering more collaborative efforts versus competitive efforts because competition is great for those who actually need it, but it's not necessary for those to grow. So, you know, that's our motto. We stick to collaborating versus competing with each other because we're special, man. Our whole entire, our whole entire makeup is special. If we can't support each other in that, then, you know, we're not going to be able to grow in the spaces that we need to grow in this country. And outside of the country. So
yes. And there's space for all our voices. That's the difference. Like, it's like having that abundance mindset, knowing that if somebody has a piece of the pie, that if somebody takes a piece of the pie, that there's no pie left for you. It's creating that abundance mindset when in reality, you know, when you're giving light to somebody else, they give light to you and it's just, and it grows and it grows and it grows.
Yeah. Real quick. So Latinos in Business asks, is there an app or a website you use to organize everything? Not sure of what they're
app?
Yeah.
Well, with like, for example, with Jorna, who I'm working with, we use Glip. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like a, what is it called? Like an Asana, but it's actually free, which is great. Don't we love free stuff? An app or a website? What else? No, not. I mean, I use Final Cut. Well, depends. For my videos, I use Final Cut Pro. I use a lot of things. You know, you explore so many things. If you could be more specific in general, I use WordPress. I've had to learn a lot about the back ends of WordPress. I've actually taken an SEO course, so a search engine optimization. I think if I were to go back to school, I'd go into computer science because it's so crucial for what we do, you know, and in general for the world. I did an episode where I interviewed a Latina that was going into computer science, and we need more women in that space as well. Just like we need more writers and producers, we need more women engineers and techies, because that's the world, that's the future.
I wanted to give a quick little shout out to Rosalia, who's listening to us. Her podcast is called About Consent, and it's a consent podcast. It's a parenting / consent podcast. So how to talk to your children about consent. And she's also part of the podcast network. So I
interviewed her. People. She's on my podcast.
Yeah.
Yes, I interviewed her.
Yeah.
yes, I interviewed her. I love Rosalia. Yes.
Yeah. And then we also had Rosie in here too with Life 100 podcast. Rosalia is from El Salvador, family from El Salvador, and then Rosie is from Puerto Rico, and they are actually found in 2 different parts of the world. Rosalia is in Canada, and Rosie's down in Austin, Texas. So if you have a chance to listen to everybody's podcast, you guys check them out because they're great content. But yeah, one more question for you. Okay, so I'm a mama. Mamas Con Ganas, let's say, right? What is the number one tip you would give me to live my life in that space?
I say, look at everything that you think causes you pain. Write that down, because everything that's associated with that is like a limiting belief. So if you think you're not smart enough or not intelligent enough or not beautiful enough or not whatever that thing that you're telling yourself that doesn't serve you because it's that negative voice, write all those things down, and that's your story. That's a story you're creating about your life, but that's not a really good, empowering story. So write all that stuff down, all that negativity, and then switch those things. So if you say, you know, oh, I'm not smart enough, say yourself, I'm super capable, I'm super intelligent, and start replacing all those limiting beliefs with these empowering beliefs. And in the beginning, it might be hard to believe them, but the more you repeat them to yourself, the more you enter that space of awareness and realizing that all that bad stuff you're saying about yourself is completely untrue, that you're so much more powerful than you actually realize, that you're so worthy of being as that there is somebody who's guiding your every step, and that everything that may be negative in your life that may have happened has been there, put there for a reason. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's the recipe of turning your dramas into your ganas. Make it into your life fuel, baby. All those bad things, just put it in your little pocket of fuel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it sounds like you're a very empowering person. Like, if I were to ask you, Valentina, give me 5 words to describe you, what would you
energetic. Sometimes my energy is like, bah.
All right.
Energetic and bubbly. Loving. International, because I was raised between Venezuela, the United States, and France. So I'm actually trilingual. And so Spanish, English, and French. I speak some Italian and some in German. That's like, so yeah, international, energetic, bubbly, loving, and compassionate. There you go.
Which one of those 5 do you think is the most dominant in your life?
The international aspect of it. Yeah, I love to travel. The thing I missed most during the pandemic has been not being able to travel abroad. I usually go once a year. I travel at least once a year. I travel abroad, and I try to experience a different culture, something different. Like, I'm that girl who makes my sons do French on Duolingo, and I'm trying to learn even some Russian on there. Like, I love all different types of cultures. So I think that's the most dominant characteristic that I have.
That's awesome. What's been your favorite trip that you've taken?
South Africa. I did South Africa twice in 6 in 2007, and it was magical. It was It was just amazing. I did the safari experience, and I remember just being there in the bush. They call it the bush, and it's like, you know that it's sort of a danger zone. Like you feel like you're in the middle of a National Geographic, but it's beautiful and it's raw and it's nature and it's just magical. So, yeah.
I guess I'm gonna have to go to the bush when this hurricane is over. Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if they say that in America, but that's what they call it. When you're in the bush, it's like the you have the forest and then you have the rainforest, but in the Africa, or I don't know if they call it the savannah, it's the bush. They call it the bush.
Awesome. I just wanted to remind everybody who's joining us or who's coming in and out, I have actually started a fundraiser for the American Red Cross, and everybody's probably wondering why it's down there. There is a hurricane in the Gulf, and for those of you who don't know, I'm from New Orleans originally and have been one of those people that went through Hurricane Katrina. And so for those of you who are found in Texas or Louisiana, I hope everybody stays safe. But if you guys can, please donate to the Red Cross, because what they end up doing is that they actually give money to those people who are affected by hurricanes or any other natural disaster. So $2, $3, $5, just go ahead and donate it. It doesn't matter if it's today, tomorrow, or whenever. It's like that saying goes, hoy por ti, mañana por mí. So, sometimes we just have to do the little bit that we can with the access and the reach that we do. So I would really appreciate it if you guys would donate to the Red Cross and probably even share that information with your friends so that they know, because this hurricane is really big, it's really real, and a lot of people are having PTSD because of it right now. So really appreciate it if you guys share that message with everybody. I'm sorry to cut you off, Valentina. I love
that. That's beautiful. Yeah. I think, yes, it's our little grain of salt that we can give back.
Yeah. So, I really appreciate you spending time with me today. Is there anything else that you want to share with us? Tell us a little anecdote about who you are that they don't normally see behind the camera.
Let's see here. One of the great things about the pandemic has been that I actually sort of took a risk and I became a co-author of a book. I've always wanted to write a book. One day I'll write my entire book, but I did my co-authoring book, and it's something that I'm really proud of because it came out to be a beautiful thing. It's called Ignite Love.
Oh my God.
So I wrote a chapter on the power of forgiveness, and it was a beautiful experience. I think everybody has a story to tell, and it became an international it's part of an international best-selling series on Amazon. So I have the link on, if anybody's interested. It's a beautiful gift because it's all stories of love. Ignite Love. It's everybody's story on their moment where they ignited love and they were just connected to that force that's so powerful. It's so beyond us. So yeah, the link is on my bio if somebody wants to see it. But it's something that I'm actually really proud of that I've been able to partake during this time. And it's just happened so.
What made you write about forgiveness?
So, when I told you that I had, that I went through like a really painful divorce, it was a moment in time where I was very angry. Particularly, and I was, blaming everything on my ex and very angry. I was so angry. And then I realized one day I woke up and I realized that the person I was really angry at was myself. Mm. And then I realized that the person I had to forgive was myself for making the wrong decisions, for not realizing certain things, for being perhaps naive, a lot of different things. And it was hard to forgive myself. I think, we always talk about the forgiveness of others, but sometimes we don't realize it's a mirror of actually not being able to forgive ourselves. Because when we're hard on other people, it's always because we're really hard on ourselves. It's always a mirror. Mm. And so that, I wanted to write that story of discovering that we have to be compassionate towards ourselves. So we talk about being compassionate towards others, but everything starts, with an inner journey into loving ourselves, finding that self-worth or rediscovering it if we've lost it because of some hardship or different reason. So that's why I wanted to, that's why I wrote about the book. And interestingly enough, it was not necessarily what I started writing, but then when you put your hand down to pen, something happens where you're just inspired, and that's what came out. The actual forgiveness of myself, because after I forgave myself, forgiving him, although we ended up getting a divorce, forgiving him was easy, because in reality that the one that I had to come with full circle with was myself.
How long after you forgave yourself did you write this chapter?
Oh no, a long time. I mean, I wrote this year.
Oh,
I wrote this year, and this happened 11 years ago. In my family, if I can give a little bit of context, I had a good role models as parents, and my parents are still happily married for like 45 years, and my grandparents are going to be, they're almost at their 70th anniversary. It's crazy.
Wow.
So yeah. So I thought life was very simple. You got married, and then you grow old, and then that's what it is, And so this took me by surprise. Like, the word divorce had never been in my horizon. Like, I didn't even, like, that word didn't really even exist. And then when it happened to me, or when I realized that there were some, I would say, when there are things that you're just not able to tolerate because that they don't go with your value system, and you have to break away from that relationship. It was like, I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, now I have that stigma. I literally remember thinking, I have to put divorcee on like a form, divorced or whatever, and that was just like, So it was very hard. Like, I felt like a failure when that happened. And I know a lot of people right now during the pandemic, there's huge divorce rates right now, because people are having to be together, where maybe there was some before, they're living these lives apart, and now they're confronting issues that they haven't talked about. And it can be good and it can be bad, because those issues can bring you closer together, or those issues can really be these non-negotiables that you find. So for anybody going through that right now, because I know there's a lot of people that are, just know that you can get through that.
It's a beautiful message. I mean, it's, sometimes it sucks how hard somebody has to fall in that feeling of failure in order for them to realize that it's okay. And, it really is just going against what you're feeling on the inside. And it's okay to make a mistake, especially for a lot of us here. I feel like that pressure to be successful has been put on us so hardcore when you're like first generation, second generation immigrant, parent, child of an immigrant. They're like, well, I came here, I sacrificed all this for you, so you have no choice but to be perfect. It's just like, whoa, that's a lot of pressure to put on.
It's a lot of pressure.
Especially live between, like for you live between three cultures, and it's like, it's impossible. That's huge on someone. And then on top of that, telling them to have perfection in their relationships and understanding who they are. And it's like, it's a whole process, It's like a judging of ourselves when we don't sort of tick markers of like, okay, happy marriage, okay, successful career, okay, happy children, and we feel like everybody else is able to do it. How come we're not doing it? But the reality it is that, we all go through our struggles and our things. But yeah, it's true. It's a lot of pressure. Actually, that's one of the things that I love about traveling abroad, because I realize that I tend to think that is a very and it's a great part of the United States, that entrepreneurial spirit. But in other places of the world, the life goes a little slower, because people really do turn their phones off and really do disconnect. Like in France, that's one of the things that I learned a lot from the French culture, is to have that be able to have that balance. Like, dinner time is dinner time, and enjoy those moments. And we forget that a lot, because we get caught up, like you said, in that hamster wheel. Yeah. And
then we don't learn to realize that the only thing that exists is the present.
That's such a powerful tool to learn about life. It's like understanding what like emotions are, and then like how living in the past is depression and living in the future is anxiety. And so like being present really kind of helps you ground. Like, you can create a plan for the future, but understanding that the only thing you can control is like what's right in front of you. And you can't even control people, which is even scarier.
No, you can't control. The only thing you can control is yourself. That's exactly, and that's like literally the basis. That's like a message I try to hone down all the time. It's like, if you're focused on trying to control other people, no matter who it is, your children, your husband, your friends, your parents, you're going to be miserable, because you're always going to be focused on what you can't control. And what we forget is what we can control is completely ourselves, our thoughts, and our thoughts control our emotions, and our emotions control our actions. So we have to be very careful about what we're thinking about, and become very intentional with monitoring the messages and that inner dialogue that we have, because that inner dialogue can get really ugly sometimes. Like, we can say some really nasty things to ourselves. So we have to really make sure that
Real quick. So Jay Horn, if you go to redcross.org, you can also donate through there. For some reason or another, the link isn't working, but yeah, redcross.org. And you'll be able to donate through there as well. And thank you so much for making a conscious effort to do that. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, Valentina, this has been such an awesome time. Thank you so much. 1, for supporting and being part of the network. 2, for sharing your voice with everybody and not being afraid to put these hard conversations out there. But 3, also for reminding women that they need to be mamas con ganas, and like go out there and just continue to do best. And, you know, women like you make all of this so much easier. Like, it just reminds us that, you know, there's such a positive conversation now that should be happening around what Latinas and Latinx people in the community create for our spaces. So thank you.
Right back at you. Thank you so much for all the stuff that you're doing, for bringing this together. I am so grateful for like the opportunity to be part of your beautiful sisterhood. So thank you. Right back at you. You're one of those empowering women, Mama.
It's just doing one day at a time. You know, like I always tell everybody, I want to leave this world better than I found it. So if that's what I'm giving to the world, then I'm more than happy. So yeah.
Yes, that's what it is. That's what it is. It's all we can take away.
Yeah.
You know?
And how can everybody find
Beautiful.
you and your podcast?
Yes. So follow. Okay. So my podcast is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever you guys listen to podcasts, you'll find it. Mamas Con Ganas podcast, and also my channel. I do put the video of my interviews on there, and I do some extra funny videos on there. I kind of bring my acting skills, and I do snippets of what I do, but I do like little comedy sketches on top of there. So you can check that out as well, which is at Mamas Con Ganas. And follow me on Instagram at Mamas Con Ganas. Everything is at Mamas Con Ganas.
Good deal. Well, thanks again. And, you know, I look forward to continuing to grow with you and, you know, putting out all these awesome voices and, you know, just growing our community. So
yes. Amen. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. Mwah.
Besitos. Bye.
Besitos. Bye.